This week, I've challenged myself to write 5 short stories for my book Operation Arc in an attempt to get myself back on track to publish by the end of this year. This challenge I'll be doing in this writing vlog to write 5 short stories in 1 week is not meant to be crazy, rather it's meant to help me build better writing habits. In the past, I've done absolutely crazy writing challenges, such as trying to write an entire book in 1 week or trying to write for 24 straight hours, and I definitely will do more challenges like that in the future. But one thing I've really noticed when I do those challenges is they don't really benefit me long term. I mean, sure, during those crazy challenges, it was really cool to see how many words I could put together in a short period of time, but at the same time, they weren't really sustainable, and long term, they didn't help my writing career at all. If I want to publish Operation Arc this year, and I know I still have a long way to go, I'm not going to get there by doing really intense challenges once every other week and then doing nothing for the other few days. Forcing myself to write 7,000 words in one day and then not writing for the rest of the week is not going to get my book done. Writing consistently every day is. While writing 5 short stories in 1 week will be a very impressive feat, it's something I can do while also building healthy writing habits. Considering today is Tuesday, I have 5 days until the next episode of The Road to Publishing my first book comes out, so my goal is to write 1 short story on each of those 5 days. This will basically mean me writing around 2,000 to 3,000 words each day, which is exactly what I want to be doing right now. As I continue to look for jobs as we go into March, right now writing is my main priority, and I definitely want to be taking advantage of the time I have while I'm looking for jobs to really write as many words as I can. Well, not write as many words as I can, but I think writing 3,000 words per day is very sustainable, especially considering I don't really have much else going on. I mean, sure, I do have this channel, but realistically, my focus should be on writing. And these challenges really do help get my focus back on writing. When I have a goal that's really large, just writing an entire book in a month, just trying to get my draft done, it's almost too daunting for me to really focus on, as opposed to having a goal such as writing 5 short stories in a week. That's something that I can really set my mind to, and it's not as daunting, which makes it easier for me to accomplish. Also, I said before that filming YouTube videos can be a really big distraction for me, and it can at times, but I will say, when I'm doing these challenges, filming these videos really holds me accountable. In my writing session yesterday, I was able to finish my first short story for the week. Ignore that, by the way. That's for a video I'll be filming after this, after I'm done writing for today. Now that I really think of it though, that video is gonna be out before I publish this video, so if you wanna see me drinking while reading Icebreaker, be sure to check that out. Because I'm filming that tonight and I want extra time, I'm gonna try to write the shortest of the 5 short stories I'm gonna be writing this week today. At least we'll see about that. Sometimes these stories end up coming out a lot longer than I thought they would, and other times they end up coming out a lot shorter. When you're just thinking about a story in your head, it's really hard to gauge how long it's going to be. One of the first stories that I wrote for draft 2 of Operation Arc, I really thought originally when I came up with it, that would be around 2,000, 3,000 words. It ended up being 10,000 words. It is by far one of the longest stories in Operation Arc. I do want to try to cut it down to 7,000 words, but it's perfectly fine that it's longer than some of the other stories. In fact, the more that I write this book of short stories, I actually find that it works a lot better when the stories are a different length. It really helps me explore different tones in each story, which is one of my favorite parts about this project. The story I wrote yesterday, for example, is about 3,000 words and it's very grim. On the other hand, I'm thinking the story I'm gonna write today is gonna be about 1,000 words and it's honestly almost comical. I mean, it is covering a dark event, there is seriousness to it, but it's honestly so funny. When I first thought of it, I could not stop laughing. And I think it's absolutely essential for a book like Operation Arc to work to have a variation in stories. If you don't already know, my book Operation Arc is a series of short stories about humans trying to survive the apocalypse on space stations that turn out to be genetic testing facilities. Almost every story in this book takes place on a different space station with a different experiment going on. There are some exceptions, but for the most part, that's the case. And last night, in addition to writing one of the stories, I also took the time to try and organize what order I think the story should go in. When I wrote my first draft of this book, there was no coherent order at all. The first draft of this book was honestly come up with a story idea and just put it on the page. In terms of a first drafting process, it was perhaps the most incoherent, all over the place drafting process I have ever had, and probably most authors have ever had. When looking at the document of my first draft, it is really hard to tell if these stories even take place in the same universe. Going into writing my second draft, I knew that was something I had to fix. I knew I had to do a better job of tying these stories together. And the 5 stories that I'm currently writing this week are definitely aimed towards tying the entire piece of Operation Arc together to tell one more coherent story. The reason why I'm doing so much writing as opposed to editing as I get the second draft ready is realistically a lot of the stories I wrote for the first draft no longer fit in the scope of the first book. For reference, the original draft covered thousands of years of material, while this draft is mainly focused on the first 30 years of this universe. And I have to say, I'm really glad I took the time last night to finally put an order together for these stories. I'm definitely gonna have to shift it around. I'm probably gonna notice that some things don't work, but having an order to at least work off of is going to be so helpful because finally I can see these stories bleeding into each other. Compared to the first draft that I originally wrote at the start of The Road to Publishing my first book, looking at this plan now for the first time, this story really feels like it's truly coming together. Just looking at the 31 story ideas that are currently on this list, and there will probably be a few stories that I do add, maybe a couple shorter stories to add to really fill in some gaps, but I definitely know that I want to include all these 30 stories, which is also a huge step for this project, because originally when I started the draft, there are a ton of stories that I just did not like, stories that I just wasn't going to include in the project. So now that I have 31 stories that I know belong in this project, just shows how much more of a clear picture I have for what I want this book to be. It's really cool to finally be seeing this vision, which at points I was definitely worried about, finally coming together on the page. I still have a lot of work to do though, and just talking about it is not gonna get anything done, so I'm gonna go get writing. So I'm not gonna lie, I am pretty hungover after filming that video last night, but I'm gonna try to push through and start this morning, well, afternoon, writing. In last week's vlog, I worked on starting my days by exercising and writing, and I really want to stick with that moving forward. Easier said than done though, because this is the worst I felt in the morning in a long time. Filming that video was a lot of fun though, so it was definitely worth it. The writing for the third story I'm writing in this challenge has gone a lot slower than my writing for the first two stories, and a big reason for that is I really didn't have as clear of an idea for this third story when I started it. Sometimes when I have a story idea, I think it's a really good story idea, and then once I start to write it, I realize I really don't know as much about the story as I thought I did when it was just in my head. That's really the feeling I'm having right now as I'm writing this third story. It doesn't feel complete yet, but that's still okay. Honestly, I think it's really beneficial when you're not really sure exactly what's going to happen in a story to try to write it. Earlier on, when I was a younger writer, what I would typically do is when I really didn't know how I wanted a story to go, I would just stop writing it and really just think until I had a better concept. But I've learned that it's better to kind of work through it, and by making mistakes and writing bad versions of a story, you'll have a better idea of what it'll take to write that story in a good way. That being said, it is getting late at this point, and I'm really not that close to completing the story. I feel like I'm writing 100 words and then deleting 50 to kind of go in a different direction. At this point, I'm really noticing that I'm starting to lose train of thought and fall asleep while I'm looking at the computer screen, which really is not beneficial when it comes to trying to write a story. While I did really want to stick to one story per day during this challenge, I think it'll be really better at this point for me to go to sleep for the night and then wake up in the morning, try to write this story, and then try to write my story for tomorrow. There's definitely no shame in that. It'd be different if I put absolutely no work in today, but I did put work in. It's just that it didn't really come out as well as I hoped it would. Who knows, maybe after working on this for several hours today, getting a good night's sleep will really help me wake up in the morning and have a better idea of what direction to take the story. Sometimes it's definitely better to take some time away from a document when you're stuck, but only after you've already put in some work towards that document, if it makes sense. I mean, you gotta put a little bit of work in before it's beneficial to take a step back. So my original plan for today was to write that third story that I didn't quite complete yesterday, and then write a fourth story. To be honest, it really has not gone as well as I would have hoped. On top of writing for today, I also had the goal to get my icebreaker YouTube drinking video out, and I really put all my energy towards that. In general, I typically do get a little frustrated with myself when I put so much energy into social media and making content rather than actually focusing on my book, which is what all my platforms are focused on, you know, being a writer. However, this time I really made sense why I was so focused on YouTube. I had a video this week that did really, really well. My AI video where I showed that AI could not write my book blew up. I was super excited, and I really wanted to jump out and get another good video out there. And I know this video where I'm reading Icebreaker is gonna be a blast. So I really put my energy towards putting that out as quick as possible while also really giving it good quality. Now, sure, it would be absolutely amazing if after editing that video, I also came out and had an incredible writing session today. That's not really how it's worked. I did write a little bit in the morning, and I have forced myself to really put some words on the page this evening. Now I've actually completed the fourth story for this challenge, even though I kind of still haven't finished the third story, but at least I did write something. The fourth story in this challenge to write 5 short stories in 1 week is definitely the shortest of the stories I've written so far. It's only around 1,400-ish words. That being said, it is pretty decent the way it is so far. I definitely think I want to bulk it up, add more elements, some more descriptions to it. Typically, when I write, I am an underwriter. Sometimes I do tend to get carried away and overwrite, but normally I am an underwriter, so it's a lot of my editing is actually adding words to kind of fill out my stories. Now, when I say fourth story, I should really put an asterisk there because I still haven't completed the third story from yesterday. Originally, I really did want to get that story done today, but after editing for that video and writing, I really have no more motivation to even look at the document for Operation Arc anymore. Which means this challenge, like most things I do in life, is going to come down to the very last day. Now, the idea for story 5, the one that I'm going to be writing tomorrow, is definitely the longest out of all the ideas I've written so far. And in addition to that, I also have a decent chunk of story 3 to write, but if there's any day to write a lot of words, it's definitely going to be tomorrow. Tomorrow's Saturday. I really don't have anything else planned, so I can just really focus on writing. I've already told myself that even though this video is coming out on Sunday, I'm not editing it until Sunday morning. I really want to devote Saturday to writing. Editing for the icebreaker video is one thing. That's a video idea that I've had for a really long time, and I was really excited to get it out there. But in general, I really have to work on prioritizing my writing over creating content. And that doesn't mean create less content or create lesser content. It means just be smarter with the time that I do have. It's not gonna happen tomorrow, but realistically, I try to avoid writing more than 3,000 words a day. On a good day with an idea that I'm really passionate about, I can realistically get 3,000 words in under 2 hours. Even on a bad day where I'm really not feeling my best, I can still have that within 3 hours. My point is, that still leaves plenty of time for me to edit videos and film videos. I just have to be smarter with my time. I mean, for the majority of today, I prioritize making a YouTube video. If I can do that, I can also prioritize writing my book for a day. Honestly, not only can I do that, I should be prioritizing my book more than I currently am. So, day 5 of this 5-day writing challenge. The big question is, did I come in clutch with a really big writing day? No, I did not. I will say the day started off pretty strong, getting around 3,000 words written for the 5th story, and that's when things really start to begin to fall apart. In those 3,000 or so words, I had about 2 scenes written for this story, and after writing those scenes, it became really clear in my head that I didn't quite have a really strong direction for the 5th and final story in this 5-story writing challenge. Now, the issue I'm having with this story, as opposed to the issue I'm having with the 3rd story, is this story really doesn't feel much like a story on its own. The big issue with the 5th story that I tried to write today is it really felt like it didn't stand on its own. Now, if this was just a chapter in a bigger story, it would actually be absolutely fine, but it's really important to me that every single story in Operation Arc really stands on its own and tells a story on its own. What I got on the page today for the 5th story really just did not do that. It more felt like exposition and dialogue, but it just didn't really serve much of a purpose. Now, in terms of the grand scheme of the book, these scenes definitely do serve a bigger purpose. It's just, they're not a story, at least not yet. Out of all the 5 stories I wrote for this project this week, the 5th story is definitely the most important. It's a story that, when it is complete, is going to try to bridge together the events that are happening on Earth and in the arcs. After really playing around with this story all day long, I came to the conclusion that the reason why it doesn't feel complete and it just feels like a couple scenes that don't really tell a story is I think I'm telling it from the wrong point of view. So now that I know that, in terms of the long-term future of my book, today was a very productive day. However, for this challenge, I really need to have a monster writing session today. And after writing those 3,000-ish words, I really fizzled out. And I also, if I really want to accomplish this challenge, I had to also finish story 3 today. And I was so busy trying to work how to fix story 5 that I haven't even looked at story 3 today. So as a result, I'm gonna fall short in this challenge. My goal in this challenge was to write a draft for 5 short stories in 5 days. I ended up finishing with 3 and also working on 2 other short stories. So I guess you could say I wrote 3 and 2 half stories. I did work on 5 stories in 5 days. I just only finished 3 of them. So technically that's a failure for the challenge, but it really doesn't feel like a failure because I really did get a lot done. And my ultimate goal for this week was to spend more time working on Operation Arc than I had in the previous weeks, and I definitely did that. I'm having a little bit of trouble counting because I did a lot of deleting words this week, especially in the 2 stories that I was struggling with. But in total, I think I've kept 13,000 words on the page. My goal was to write 15,000 words for this challenge this week, and if I hadn't deleted anything trying to rewrite and restructure stories, I definitely would have accomplished that. And even though, in terms of the word count goal for this challenge, I also failed, I do not want to call this a failure because the ultimate goal was to spend a significant amount of time in each of these 5 days working on Operation Arc, and I did that. Between these 2 challenges I've taken on over the past 2 weeks, I'm really getting into the habit of getting work done every day on Operation Arc. Last week's challenge was about getting at least something on the page every single day, while this week's challenge was really focused on having a devoted writing session to Operation Arc on each of these days. Since I started doing these productive challenges, it's only been 2 weeks, and you can already see how much of an impact it's had on the progress I'm making on my book. That being said, next week I will not be doing a challenge. In fact, next week I won't be doing a writing vlog at all. You're probably wondering right now why, if this is working, why would I stop? And the answer is I'm not really stopping. I'm going to try to continue to work on Operation Arc every single day next week. It's just that I do want to focus my YouTube time on doing my indie book reviews of the month series. So I'm going to be doing a 24-hour readathon challenge for indie sci-fi books. So as a result, it doesn't really make sense for me to make a writing vlog this week. That being said, I'm still going to be writing this week. I'm just going to get back to the challenge series next week with a new writing challenge. So the next episode of The Road to Publishing My First Book won't be next Sunday, it'll be the Sunday after that. And be sure to stay tuned for that because I'm pretty sure I'm going to be doing a Brandon Sanderson related writing challenge, so that's definitely going to be a lot of fun. That being said, I am getting pretty tired. I do have to edit this when I wake up in the morning, so that's going to do it for this writing vlog. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comments how your current work in progress is currently going. If you haven't already, please be sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel. Good luck with your work in progress.